This video is brought to you by PayPal, helping you seize the season when holiday gift-spiration strikes. Shop the globe today.
Hello and welcome to Deconstructed, where we take a list that we've already done and break it down entry by entry to talk about each one and give you a little insight into our thought process around here. Today's list is the top 10 disappointing games of 2017. So let's take a look at the original ranking. All right, so welcome to Deconstructed. Let's take a quick look at our panel. Today with me is Ricky, the new guy.
What's up?
And Andrew, who's no longer the new guy by default. There we go. These guys both work in the video game department with us, so most of your rage is directed at least one of us indirectly. Yeah. Mostly this guy. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Friday the 13th, the game. Not the old one, the new one, because this is 2017, and that's what we're talking about.
Broken. It's so, well, this is a perfect example of, we're not talking about worst games of 2017, we're talking about disappointing. And this game was just too ambitious for such a small indie team, because it needed to be a horror multiplayer game. And that's just something that you can't do, because your community is just going to mess that up and not take it seriously.
No. Like, listen, people will always try to mess with your game. That's a fact. But listen, Dead by Daylight exists. That's a game that works very similar to this, actually, in terms of how it flows and stuff. And that's by a pretty small development team too, if I'm not mistaken. I just think it's more like, okay, this game had a shadow to come out from under because it was another Friday the 13th game, and it's a licensed game. You know, Friday the 13th for NES, obviously one of the most ridiculed games of all time. We were just trying to play it at launch, though, and it was buggy. Yeah. Like, it was buggy and the servers didn't work.
Yeah, it was underwhelming, to say the least. Just the animation were crap. It looked just jagged and didn't flow at all. And
remember, guys, we are talking about disappointing. We're not going to totally drag these
games.
Because
it's a lot of fun to play, and it's a lot of fun to watch, and it's a great game for streamers. It's just, it could have been more than just a sideshow. Yeah. And that's what it is. Yeah. It's a sideshow that's a fun distraction.
See, this is what, I got the sense that this game was like the second wave of games that have been made with Let's Players in mind. Like, we had, last year and the year before, we had, the surgeon simulators, and what else we had? Octodad and stuff like that, which is clearly made with those streamers in mind. Scream streamers, if you want to call them that. So I feel like this is the next wave of that type of game, and in that sense, I think it kind of succeeded, because I think it got a lot of press that way. I wanted to read one cool comment, not the least because he's got a pretty sweet name. Kurt Cocaine says, "Wait, Friday the 13th, the game is disappointing because of bugs? Is there anything else you'd like to complain about? Perhaps the repetitive nature of the game, the lack of game modes and maps? I'm a fan, and I've been addicted to playing it since it launched, and even I can contribute something to this video while making your selection worthwhile. Video feels sort of lazy." Okay, criticism taken. This is actually a relatively good comment.
Yeah,
he has valid points.
It's hard to find these this is an actual constructive criticism of our entry, so I'm not actually going to refute it.
Thank you, Kurt Cocaine, for that.
Thank you, Kurt.
Criticism.
Okay, let's go on to number 9. Valkyria Evolution, which is not related to how they talk in the game at all. My accent, that is.
No revolution at all, actually. It's separate from the other Valkyria titles in the timeline and the way it's presented, but it's the cutscenes are 15-minute cutscenes, back of the head.
So they don't have to animate the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. They skipped out on that, and you don't want to be watching 15 minutes of some anime girl's head. And if you skip them, you miss the whole story, so you can't even fast forward. So there's that, and then there's the gameplay. It's generic, yeah. It's repetitive. It's a repetitive hack and slash. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's any strategy behind it, and
that's pretty much all Valkyria Chronicles had going for it, right? The original series. I'm a big fan of the turn-based strategy / RPGs, like Fire Emblem, XCOM, recently Divinity: Original Sin 2, my favorite of this year for sure. So I think it's a shame that this game wasn't in that vein. I'm assuming executive speak says that those games don't sell, and they're hoping to hit a larger market, which is I think a problem with just franchises
But
in
you're
general.
isolating your
Yeah,
core fan base. So at what cost?
It's trying to clearly expand the fan base, but I
Yeah.
think they just diminished it, unfortunately.
Yeah, they took the name and they dragged it a little bit through the mud.
Not a lot of comments about that one. I guess not many people were as disappointed as we were.
I guess they expected it, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, they just agree with us.
All right, let's steer this conversation over to our next entry, shall we? That's going to make sense in a second. So for Gran Turismo Sport, I've got another comment here, and Dr. 4 Gone Killer 96 said he basically wrote our entry for us. It's pretty harsh because once again we got to say this is why it's on the disappointing list. And he goes, Gran Turismo Sport is far from disappointing. It looks great. I'm going to skip his bracketed part here. Yeah. It also is getting a full career mode like the last iterations, including endurance races. It's getting more cars, possibly up to 4,000. The only thing it doesn't have is tracks, but the track selection is fine for an esports focused game. It's also getting offline, so you can save offline. Now he used the word "getting" like 3 times. He basically just listed off all the features
That we didn't get yet.
That we didn't get yet, and explained why it's a disappointment. Discussion over?
No, because they patched the game today.
Yeah, they patched.
And the patch that came out today added a lot of those features that he was missing. On the big one was offline campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is something people were clamoring for. But the game's not that old. The game came out in October. And while I'm not condoning releasing a game before it's finished
Right.
and patching features in afterwards, the focus of this game was towards being an esport. So they sort of tightened the game up quite a bit and really emphasized that aspect of it. And then the fact that they're, adding to it and bringing these features slowly back in, to me, makes this doesn't really belong on the list. I don't think this was particularly disappointing.
So it's redeemed
Really?
itself.
I think it's redeemed itself, especially with the content that they've added. They've added a few more cars.
Well, I think Mr. Dr. 4 Gone Killer 96 PC would agree with you, but I don't know, man. The points he's brought up make perfect sense for why you'd be disappointed. Also, you said that a lot of these changes are a pivot towards esports.
Racing games don't have any sport. They needed one.
Okay,
and that's what this game is. And that's what this game
I
is.
will
Racing
concede-
fans are hardcore as shit.
This is true.
They're so hardcore.
They
about
love
their
driving.
games.
Yeah, they love driving. Yeah.
Because this isn't Mario Kart, right? This is Forza. These are games that people want to be really, really good at to show how good they are. To be like, look how unforgiving this racing game is.
All I'm saying, and this is the last thing we'll say on this because I'm the boss here, is that I can understand why fans would be disappointed if your favorite gaming franchise decided to pivot towards esports.
Fair point.
Sure.
Fair point.
But I don't. Moving. What next? Next entry.
Moving
next
on.
Entry.
There we go. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. We're talking about a buggy launch.
I'm not defending this one.
Oh man, they walked back so much fun stuff. No 3 players. No, excuse me, no 3 fighter tournament mode.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why they take that out. That's like a staple of the franchise.
I'm thinking it was technical limitations. I think the game probably puked if you tried to do that.
Oh,
That's my.
We're in 2017, guys.
2017,
It
yeah.
shouldn't be an issue.
No,
I
if
mean,
you can have
come
a
on.
giant open world, you can have 6 characters swapping in and out.
It's not. It's ridiculous. It's either lazy or.
But is it? But I mean, it's a fighting game, Ren. As long as you can pick your Wolverine and go in and fight some people, you're gonna have fun.
But that's another problem. I mean, the previous Marvel vs. Capcom games. Yes, you knew you were baiting me there. Previous Marvel vs. Capcom games, you get access to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and all that stuff.
And Wolverine's been at the very first. This game is a spin-off of X-Men versus Street versus Street Fighter.
Yeah.
So Wolverine was in that one.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Wolverine's been in it since day one.
Yeah,
Gone
and
now.
you know what? We perfectly understand the licensing regulations. Fox owns the X-Men and Fantastic Four, so they can't appear in something that's an official Marvel property. But from a gamer's perspective, that just kind of blows, dude.
Yeah, it's like even the storyline with the whole Infinity Stones. It feels like they're just setting up that next Avengers movie.
It felt like it was trying very hard
Yeah.
to just be another facet of the MCU.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what they want to do. I mean, they want to bring it into the light. They want to build the hype around it, and so they pushed it out as this like extension to the story.
Funny story, when we were at E3 this year, they were playing it on this huge screen, and below it they had Ultron Sigma, which is like the combination of, Mega Man X's villain Sigma and Ultron from the Marvel Universe. Anyway, amazing display.
Yeah.
And mid-tournament between two players, the game blue screened. Like in front of all of E3. I mean, all of E3 wasn't watching that one thing, but it was a bad look.
It tried to add
We were
an
watching
extra,
it.
an extra character. Those 3 characters really.
Yeah.
It won't-
That's
it won't
when
work.
they patched it out. They
Yeah.
added the extra characters, exactly. Warhammer 40K, Dawn of War 3. Now, I used to really play. I never even bothered with this one because, call me a shill. I read the reviews, and they made a pivot towards MOBAs. Like, I mean, we were talking just before about like having a franchise that you love pivot towards esports. This is my sore spot. Like, okay, I understand that A, real-time strategy games on their way out. B, MOBAs, okay, say they started production of this game in 2014, 2015. MOBAs are the hottest thing at that point.
Yeah.
The pivot kind of makes sense, especially if you're a suit, if you're an executive. 2017 rolls around. Real-time strategy games are still very dead, and people are sick of MOBAs. Like, the poor guys working on this game must have known people would have been pissed off. Like, was anyone out there, viewers, are you guys clamoring for another multiplayer online battle arena game? Hey.
With your favorite franchise.
With your favorite franchise?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't even a full-blown MOBA.
Yeah, it
No,
wasn't even.
so
No,
it
it
was
wasn't.
just like it was
It
a
makes
poor
nobody happy.
facsimile of everything. It's just, thankfully we did get a pretty cool Warhammer strategy game this year. It wasn't 40K,
Yes.
but
No,
You're a
Warhammer
big
Total War 2 is the game that I've been playing nonstop since
Yeah.
it came out. So I have that.
so we got to plug that at least. All right, so Shadow of War, yes. Okay, I know you have something to say about this.
Shadow of War. Yeah.
Shadow of War.
Yeah, okay.
I know you have something, like, as if we didn't prep before the show. Anyway, the thing about Shadow of War is there's 2 games this year that came out where we played previous versions of them about 2 or 3 years ago, and you and I were saying, like, man, these games, all they have to do, they're definitely going to make a sequel, so they just have to make it just a little bit bigger, a little bit more content, and it's sold. We'll talk about the second one on this list a little bit later. But Shadow of War, what happened?
I was so pissed off at this game. Like, you know how much I liked the first one. The first one was just an enormous amount of fun, but no content. Criminal lack of content.
Yeah, Andrew was really, really upset when he finished the game. He was like, "Fuck that game."
I thought there was still like another. I thought it was halfway through the game, and
Yeah.
then it's like press X to kill Sauron. No, so this one I was super excited. This is the only game this year that I pre-ordered because I swore I wasn't gonna 2017. I'm like, I'm not gonna
No more
pre-order anything.
pre-orders.
I pre-ordered Shadow of War, and I was really good game, really fun. All of that stuff is still there, but they just bloated the hell out of it.
Right,
They did an Assassin's Creed. They just put
Your
too much crap.
your criticisms aren't really related to the loot boxes.
I don't give a shit about the loot boxes. They didn't buy, like, I'm not buying them, but they didn't. They were not my problem with this game.
Because you didn't get that far. You didn't get, because apparently
No, I didn't get to the
'cause
end.
they only
I
come
was
in at the end.
angry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it just was a slog, and all the fun. The combat is still there. The AI is fantastic. The orcs are super interesting. The orcs are the best part of the game. They should just make a game that's just sim Shadow of War orc. I would play the hell out of that game.
You get to keep their heads on this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was just too much crap. The whole game feels like the tutorial never ends. They're always just introducing new stuff that
Always
you're
learning,
not going to
man.
need
Always
and that
learning.
you don't care about anymore. And there was just way too many balls to keep up in the air, and it was getting in the way of the fun. They went way too overboard.
So like they turned it a little bit too far to the.
Yeah, they turned into Assassin's Creed. They went from Arkham City, or maybe Arkham Asylum, like a tight game where everything in it has a reason to be in it. And then they turned it into Assassin's Creed game. It's just bloated, way too much crap.
Ricky, thoughts?
I mean, I can get behind that, being overwhelmed by gameplay and things that aren't even core to the series or to the fun of the series.
Well, there's always that moment when you're starting a game, especially a big adventure game like
Yeah.
this, where you're kind of eager for them to take the training wheels off and just let you go.
Of course, I mean,
And that just never seems to end in Shadow of War.
No, never. I bought a new video card for this game. I was so disappointed. And this is the thing. It's still a good game, and I will go back to it, but this is for me the most disappointing game of the year.
wow, okay.
So now it comes time to pivot to something that's a little more, this is a bit sadder. We're not actually ripping on the game, we're sort of just ripping on the circumstances of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can guess, actually, it's probably like right there on the screen. I'm not sure where it is, but it's right there. It's the next one. You see it coming? Let's talk about it. Anyway, Lawbreakers.
Yeah.
Lawbreakers. Now, we got some comments for this one. Both of them pretty much carry the same sentiment. I would play Lawbreakers if I could actually find a match. And Turtleneck says, the reason for Lawbreakers is kind of sad. And it is.
Yeah, it's actually really sad because the game's
cool.
Gorgeous. I mean, it looks beautiful. It was a good experience. Now, the only thing that I think is hampering it down, aside from the player base, it's more of the same in terms of we have Overwatch, and that's taken a large chunk of people away from these other titles, these kind of like cartoony shooters, these team-based shooters. And
you think you're getting in trouble for saying it's a little too similar to Overwatch?
I'm not saying it's exactly Overwatch, but I do think that it shares that whole dynamic, the mechanics of the game. Like it looks like it plays like Overwatch.
So how badly do you think this was hurt by the fact that very early on, people were saying that no one was playing? I feel like if that becomes the discourse around your multiplayer game, it's literally instantly dead. Had you guys heard a lot about this before it came out?
No, there was not much marketing done, and I think that their the main icon they used to portray the game is something called Dead Zone, and it was like what you see when you die. And when it came out, it was just brushed over, even though it looks great and it plays great. There's no excitement about it, and I think they missed the mark with that chance.
I feel like it's kind of like, all right, first of all, I don't think it was marketed very well.
No.
I don't think just the brand recognition and the exposure for the game before release, I think was pretty bad, and I think that hurt it a lot. But I also think that's it ties into the art style. I think you look at like an individual still, and that looks great,
yeah.
But it also kind of looks like what they put on the box for your new 3D card. That's like supposed to be from a video game. It's like video game art, but it's not from any game because it's just generic. And I think this game kind of suffered from how, like, there's some really cool and beautiful art that's gone into it, but at the same time, I feel like it's, like, visually, you can't look at a single thing and say, like, that looks like it's from Lawbreakers. You look at stuff created for other games, and I hate to draw this comparison again because people will be upset, but you can go like, that looks like it should be in Overwatch. Battleborn had that problem last year. Battleborn, its branding looked so similar, people kept confusing it.
In an oversaturated market, you do have to push even character development and have a face or a couple of faces that are associated with your game.
Probably the saddest entry on this list.
Yeah.
It's disappointing in the most truly disappointed sense. If that
it could have been
makes
so
any-
much, and maybe there's still time.
I think there is.
I think so too.
I think this game will have legs, but it's always going to be the underdog, unfortunately. Yuka friggin' Laley.
This is one to Dave.
Yes, a guy who we work with in the video game department, one of the stalwarts, was really looking forward to this. He always wants Banjo Kazooie on our retro list. He backed the Kickstarter. I think he was like a high tier backer. He was really looking forward to it.
Clothing and shit. I think he got like a
Yes, he got
sweater,
some. He got a T-shirt or something.
Haven't seen him wearing it yet.
No. Well, he's not so happy with it. I think. See, this is a good example of a game that was almost too faithful in its recreation. For those of you that don't know, it's a spiritual successor to Banjo Kazooie, and you know it's a good collectathon. Actually, you know what? I have a comment about this. Let's get the comments. All right, so Dark Chaos Caxi says, Yooka-Laylee should be nowhere near the top of this list. I can understand giving it a mention because of the scope of the game being slightly similar, but it got way too much negative press. The game is just fantastic and tickled the nostalgia perfectly. Most complaints were about it being bugged, which it was patched fairly quickly, I might add, or because it's a collectathon. All caps, that's what it's supposed to be. Also, might I add, for another time, that the complaints in this video were actually really shallow in comparison to the other Dishonors, despite it being so high on the list. Didn't agree with the order. I think, now, you want to talk about why we placed it so high? Because I think there was a lot riding on this. Like people, you know, talk about press and brand recognition. First of all, not only did this game gain a lot of hype, but it's really easy to spot the characters. even like, okay, you show some of the side characters, you might not go like, oh, that's from Ukulele. But emblematic branding from day one and a built-in audience. What I was going to say was that, like, I just feel that this is a great example of a game that copied over a lot of the tropes and gameplay elements that were in the predecessors that are not necessary anymore in a game like this, you know?
Well, it tried to mimic it instead of like taking not a genre but a style of game that worked in the early 2000s and adapting it in the way, say, like an XCOM
Or Doom.
right? Or modernizing
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Doom is a better example.
Yeah.
Or modernizing it, they replicated this early 2000s style of adventure game.
Almost too closely.
Exactly.
I mean, it's an original title, and people were backing it on Kickstarter and put their money into it, and were excited about it, and they kind of got this beautifully recycled, but recycled nonetheless.
Beautifully recycled. You don't really hear those words together.
Yeah, I mean, the game looks great, and the art style's great, and it's vibrant, and it's got this nostalgic throwback, but it's not enough to save it from all of its flaws, and I guess that's why it's on the list. It's disappointing. It could have been awesome, and it was.
It's a fun thought experiment when you look at an old game that was a classic and you say, like, if this was released today, would it be popular?
Yeah.
And it's just like a lot of things that we were used to when we were playing the N64 have been kind of fixed.
Yeah.
And like you tolerated it back then, but shouldn't necessarily have to tolerate it now. Oh well.
And it's also, and that's why it's so high on the list too, is because this game had more. It's almost flattering to the game that it's number 3.
Almost.
Yeah, exactly, because there was definitely a market for it. Dun, 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 dun. Uh-oh. Okay, so funny story for viewers at home, when we were prepping our end of the year lists, so disappointing, worst, and best game of the year, there was a big discussion over whether or not we should leave a blank spot for best game of the year for Star Wars Battlefront, because it hadn't come out yet. Needless to say, we didn't have to swap anything around on the best games of the year list.
No, it's ended up on the other one.
But I think this is another great example of disappointment. It's not necessarily a flat-out broken product, and I think it's competent in what it's trying to do. Okay, you know what? What do you guys think?
Okay, so here's my thing with it. Obviously, the progression system from the outset was completely broken with the battle points.
Not pulling any punches, Ricky.
No, it was broken. The loot boxes. I mean, I feel like they're taking advantage of the player base by saying, okay, you got to pay for this. You got to put in like 40 hours to get a skin. It's like almost like abuse, because they know that the Star Wars name carries that weight, and they know that people are going to go out and get it anyways. EA knows that, and so when you're doing that, you're treating us like idiots. And you're taking us for granted, and there's a reason why that Reddit comment is the most downvoted one in history, because people and gamers who are analytical look through and see these shallow attempts at taking your money and exploiting your time, and I mean, again, the game itself obviously isn't. It's not horrible. It's not horrible.
No,
it's a fun experience, and a lot of people from the comments that I've read as well.
Yeah, I got tons of comments here. You probably see them on screen as I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
Technology, but like a lot of people love it. They don't care about the loot crates, and if you don't, that's okay. What I got when I played it was that like it really did feel like the game was skewed towards these things. Like they did the thing that people have been complaining about forever, but hasn't quite happened. Yeah. This idea that like the loot boxes will actually result in pay-to-win mechanics, that like they will actually damage the gameplay by implementing these things. It's a real shame.
And it damaged the gameplay almost immediately, because when you jump in and you get killed by somebody, because you see the star cards of the people who killed you, you see their upgrades. I don't want to play a shooter, a multiplayer shooter, where the other person's using the same gun as me, but their gun does more damage. Yeah. Or where the other person just is the same class as me, but they're taking less damage, or running faster, or their grenades. I don't want to play a multiplayer shooter that has those kinds of mechanics in the game. When there's unlocks and customization, like in Battlefield games or Call of Duty games,
it's supposed to be
sideways. It's give and take. Yeah. Exactly, it's sideways. And this game is not a step sideways. It's the more you play, your starfighter will do more damage than the other guy's starfighter. This game it's not so much a disappointment to the Battlefront franchise, it's a disappointment to gaming.
Ooh, hot take of the day.
Yeah.
Oof. And this was, we were talking before about games where we saw the last one, we say, okay, this is not perfect, but if they make a solid sequel and learn from their mistakes, then we're just gonna have a great game. And I think you're right in what you're saying. Like, they knew that they just had to tell everyone that they're adding more features, throw in all the eras, make it look pretty, it's Star Wars, and people are gonna buy it because we are those people. That was me.
It's us.
I was gonna buy it.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks volumes to how popular this whole franchise is. Like that, we had confidence in it. We were just like, I think this game's gonna be good. I'm really hoping for a Lord of Destruction, Diablo 3, not Lord of Destruction, Reaper of Souls kind of turnaround where they can take their licks and release an expansion or some patches that really just kind of turns it around and like fixes what was broken. But I honestly don't think it's so much like, because they turned off the microtransactions.
Right.
I don't think it's as easy as just flipping a switch.
No.
There's going to be some balancing issues.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of you like it, by the way. So if you're typing that you're having fun with it, like, please, we understand.
Have fun.
Please,
have fun.
It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
We don't want
we don't want
to suck the fun out of your life.
We don't want a game to be bad. We don't look at a game and be like, oh, I hope this game sucks.
Yeah.
We want games to succeed.
No.
We are gamers.
And it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Numero uno. Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, I know you're a big fan, Andrew, Ricky. You've been playing Mass Effect games?
Not recently, no.
Not recently?
No,
not the new one?
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, Andrew and I both have N7 gear. I think we're huge fans. But, like, okay, game did have big shoes to fill. I think it's a good example of, okay, I'm not defending the game fully, because there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. Like, there was the animation thing, and the writing kind of sucked. And the RPG mechanics were kind of simplified. There's tons upon tons of things to pull apart. Yeah, I don't think they made the sell properly way before the game came out that like it's time to return to Mass Effect. This is a new Mass Effect game to get pumped for. I at no point was I watching trailers and I was like, oh my God, Mass Effect's back. Who cares about Shepard? Blah blah blah. I was just sort of like, I guess I'm gonna like this because I like Mass Effect. But those were my thoughts going in. I think this is a good example. We were talking about how Lawbreakers was probably hurt by the fact that if the first thing you hear about the game is that no one's playing, that's very bad.
Yeah.
And this game was really hurt by that whole animation row. Like that, how the game was accessed, EA access, people could play it a week early, and just the shots of the horrible janky animations came out. I think that sunk the game right off the bat, even if it were to be an amazing accomplishment after that. But that was a nice jumping off point, I think, for people to just rip on it.
Well, it undermines the integrity of the whole thing. I mean, you see something that's supposed to be a AAA title with a legacy of Mass Effect, and it kind of just looks jaggedy and it's not flowing, and there's no reason to keep watching it and to keep indulging yourself in it. It just takes you away from the experience. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to take a hit. We expect beautiful things. We expect to look at something and for it to be photorealistic. And when you don't see that in a Hallmark franchise like this, it does kind of take away from the whole excitement of it.
Now, there's some really good articles out there as to how, as to what went wrong. Like they had to switch it, like the engine was just not made for an RPG. Like they had to restart production at one point. I don't want to misquote these articles, so look them up yourselves. But I think we all know that they had to, because they put a few more diverse characters in, the animation suffered, because that's how game development works, They have like a whiteboard and it's like nice animations, character diversity, and they're like, gotta pick one.
Right. The social justice warriors ruined Mass Effect. That's what happened.
That's totally what happened.
Right.
These are facts, because that's how game development works.
You're just like, oh, we have to add people of color, so we can't have the game be
So it's just like, I guess we're gonna have to fire this animation team.
Trade-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're being heavily sarcastic here, by the way. I hope that's clear.
It is.
Yeah.
Now
it's clear. Is it? Oh man.
The problems with Mass Effect is people just had really, myself included, had just really, really high expectations of the game, because it's not like an indie studio making this game.
No.
It's following a huge, incredibly successful, really well-beloved franchise. And it's like a new jumping off point, like a spin-off series for a new franchise, and it just didn't live up to anything that the original Mass Effect did. It just, the combat wasn't as diverse and fun, even though they just oversimplified it too much. The characters just weren't as strong, the storyline wasn't as compelling, the writing wasn't as good. Like, it didn't reach any of the...
Nothing was quite there.
Yep.
And it's a shame. I remember playing Dragon Age Inquisition, which I wasn't crazy about, but I was like, man, can't wait till they make a Mass Effect game with this engine. But careful what you wish for, because apparently that engine really borked them.
Yeah.
Big shame. Do you think we'll ever get another good Mass Effect game?
I think we will. I think they're going to wait for the fire to die down, and then they're going to sell it as a triumphant return.
I mean, they're in position to do that, or it could go down the Sonic route and just keep getting worse.
Oh man, let's.
It's too big of a franchise. Like, Sonic was a popular character. Mass Effect is too expensive. It costs too much to make a Mass Effect game. They're gonna wait for the fire to die down, and then they might not even be a sequel to Andromeda.
Oh, I think they're going to expunge the name.
Yeah.
That name is gone.
Yeah.
We're never going back to that galaxy.
We're never going back to that.
Exploded Andromeda and nobody's visiting.
Nobody's there. Oh man. Anyway, I guess that brings us to the end of our list, guys.
Yes, so.
Ricky.
Yeah.
Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Let us know what you were disappointed with in the comments this year. Anytime this year, actually. And be sure to like and subscribe to WatchMojo.com for more stuff. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
This video has been brought to you by PayPal. This holiday, seize the season at millions of online retailers. Shop the globe today. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.